The Human Optimization Podcast is proudly brought to you by Vicon Supplements, where quality meets sustainability. Vicon's all-natural supplements are handcrafted and sustainably produced in Canada, bringing you products that nourish both your well-being and our planet. Visit viconsupplements.com today and be a part of a greener, healthier future.
Are you ready to embark on a journey to the best version of you? Join me, Lisa Pitel-Killah, as I dive deep into the world of hair tissue mineral analysis and functional medicine with fellow experts, and guide you on the path of unlocking your full potential. As a multi-time kettlebell sport world champion, I'm on a mission to reach high-performance professionals from around the world to help you minimize tiring symptoms, maximize health, and gain unstoppable energy. This is the Human Optimization Podcast. Welcome, everybody, to a brand new episode of the Human Optimization Podcast. I am very excited for our guest today. I think you are going to find this episode really intriguing. So, Christopher Maher is a retired U.S. Navy SEAL, best-selling author, and we're going to talk about his book today, a holistic wellness pioneer who's regarded as an unparalleled authority in stress resolution, healing, personal evolution, and longevity. He spent much of his life in what appeared to be peak physical health, but soon learned that his internal health was deeply compromised. This realization kickstarted Christopher's journey, developing a comprehensive program of total healing and integration called True Body Intelligence. By working to help others diminish the stress they stored in their body, Christopher uses TBI as a tool to help resolve the fear, weakness, and distortion that often holds people back from their full potential. Hence why he is on our show today, the Human Optimization Podcast, because this is a huge part of evolutionizing, I should say, our human, right? So welcome to the show, Christopher.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yes.
I like the bio.
It's
An
always
introduction. It's very
right.
nice.
It's always interesting when we hear ourselves being introduced, and we're like, really? That doesn't even sound like me.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and you know what? Being a U.S. Navy SEAL, obviously peak physical condition and all of the training that you had to go through, and then really coming to that realization. I mean, I would love for you to share with our listeners and the people watching today your background and how you got here.
Yeah. My background. I think the most important thing for people to understand is that I was never someone who woke up in the morning focused on, I want to have a positive impact on the world, right? I was self-centered, self-focused, and self-driven for my own personal goals. And pain is how I got here. When you have pain in your body, and it sticks around and it doesn't disappear. And I know probably some of your listeners are former athletes or current athletes, and they're trying to squeeze the most out of this life. And I was doing the same. And pain started to shut me down. And it went from being intermittent to being chronic. And then it went from being chronic to being absolute. And when it got into that absolute state of function, I had to do something which was risky for me emotionally, which was reach out and ask for help.
Yeah.
Because you can imagine, I went to boarding school for 10 years in Hershey, Pennsylvania, named Milton Hershey School. And I was in the military for almost 8 years, right? So I became very self-sufficient. And so when you're self-sufficient and emotionally hyper-independent, it makes it very difficult, one, to let other people in on your pain. I didn't know that was even an option. And then two, to be able to bend a knee and ask for help. And so once I did, I got over that hurdle, everything started to change very quickly for me.
Wow. And that's when really you started. I mean, I think your self-healing journey started with Oriental medicine, right? And some
Partially,
studies.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. The first thing that I did was I invited a friend over to my house, and He brought a yoga mat and a juicer, and he helped me understand the value of the removal of tension. And this juice that he made for me at the time, my most consistent drink was beer.
Got it.
Okay. And so and so when he made that, apple, carrot, celery, parsley, drink for me, it took me like maybe 30 minutes to 45 minutes to get that thing down. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought, oh my God, this is terrible. But at some point I remember looking at him and I was thinking, oh, this tastes good to him because he's fit and healthy and
Right.
I'm fit and toxic. And
Right.
once I understood that, then I was on a path to get really healthy. So I was going, believe it or not, I was going to Jamba Juice and or this grocery store in San Diego called Jimbo's, and I was sucking down 2 or 3 ounces of wheatgrass every day.
Wow.
And I don't know if you know how disgusting that is.
I do.
But I told myself after I had the first one, I'm going to drink this until it tastes good to me. Okay. And that took a very long time. All right. So my first step really was stretching my body and changing my diet.
And with regards to kind of focusing on that, where did like a lot of what you do focuses on the stress load, right? The stress load that people have, how they internalize it. Where was that realization for you for the stress part
I,
of where you
yeah,
ended in your journey?
yeah. I think the awareness psychologically and the analysis of stress and framing it that way came quite recently, right?
Mm.
Like 2000 and maybe 12,
Hmm.
2000 and somewhere between 2010 and 2012. And then I started to understand that stress was the underlying cause of all the things that I had already solved. But I had solved those without even understanding that stress was a component, right?
Mm.
So I explain things through the framework of stress because it's a topic that has been commented on for a very long time, right? And there's tons of research around stress. So
Yeah.
when you're bringing new concepts to people, you have to bridge that information through things that they already learned and they've already known and understand and had an experience with. So stress is a safe word for people,
Right.
right? It's a
Right.
safe place where they can start. So, but what really happened for me is I met a guy who understood a bit about traditional Chinese medicine and had a practice
Hmm.
and a name for his business around meridians and stretching and opening the body. And so I went to see him in Northern California, and I spent 4 days at his center, and he worked on me 6 to 8 hours a day. And by the end of those 4 days, I never had pain in my body again.
Wow.
And that was what, 19, no, that was 2001, June 7th. Okay, so by 7, 8, 9, 10. So by the end of the 10th and the morning of the 11th, there was never any pain in my body. And that's 24 years ago.
Hmm.
Okay, so before that time, what you don't know is that I spent all my time, all my energy, all my money, and all my effort towards holistic care because a hip replacement was never going to be an option for me. That was just a bit too scary.
Yeah.
And I was losing my vision, I was losing my hearing, and I needed to turn this around. So my friend Jeff, who taught me some yoga and introduced me to juicing, also advised me to go find a rolfer. And
Hmm.
so I found a guy named Stephen Bolger who had a practice called Heller Work.
Hmm.
And he went in and did structural integration on me with his forearms and his elbows. And it was very painful, right? So basically, I had to learn how to manage my breath while simultaneously relaxing all of my muscles while he was digging in with his weight and his elbows and all that
Wow.
connective tissue. And for anyone who's never been through something like that, it's like a come to Jesus moment,
It's true.
like you really have to be ambitious, right? Because the pain that I'm feeling when he's going into my body with his elbows and his forearms is greater than the chronic discomfort I have in my knee, hip, back, shoulder, ankle, and wrist.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to learn to trust that process. And I went through his whole process. And then I found the next person and I found the next person. Before I knew it, I was spending all my time, all my energy, and all my effort seeing different practitioners all day long. Now, if
Mm-hmm.
I needed to go a mile, and I were really honest, they took me an inch. But I was very happy for that inch because when you're in constant, absolute pain all the time, 2 or 3 hour reprieve from that discomfort feels like heaven.
Right.
Yet, compared to where the guy that took me, meaning compared to the place where the other guy took me, that worked on me for 6 to 8 hours a day in Northern California with this very interesting technique that he developed, it was light years ahead where any of those people were searching and what they had developed. And it put the tools in my own hands because he taught me how to do it to myself. And now I was no longer reliant on practitioners and I could go back to my safe zone, which was self-reliance.
Right.
And so I worked on myself 5 to 6 hours a day, every single day, Christmas, New Year's, Easter, birthdays. There was never a day where I was without a serious investment into my own health and wellness. So once I started to recognize the physiological and structural shifts and changes,
Mm-hmm.
I started to see psychological and emotional changes, the way I was communicating, the way that I was holding space. Instead of being self-focused and personal and self-driven, I was being transpersonal and more vested in helping other people achieve their dreams and their desires. And I started to see a stripping of my identity, and I
Mm-hmm.
was shifting into authenticity, meaning being the person that God had designed me to become, rather than the person that I was based on the negatively conditioned strategies that I experienced as a child. So
Right.
I was lifting out of this false sense of being into this true state of expression. And that was really motivating for me because
Mm.
I had I was being bestowed with a pathway out of hell, right? And
Yeah.
for me, being hell is being anxious, right? Being frustrated, agitated, irritated, fearful, self-righteous, or angry, or rageful, or hateful. And so I left all of those states of being, but the greatest state of being that I left was guilt and shame. And I have never ever experienced guilt and or shame in the last 23 years
Wow.
because I was in harmony with my body, which
Mm-hmm.
meant my body was in harmony with God. And
Right.
when my body was in harmony with God, I could hear the universe clearly. And all I had to do was follow the breadcrumbs that were being laid down before me and allow the moment to be the master rather than attempting to dictate to society or my community or my family what I felt or thought others needed to do or be. I was okay with everyone being whatever it is that they wanted when they were in my presence. And
Mm-hmm.
that was real freedom for me, especially someone who grew up institutionalized through boarding school for 10 years in the military for another 8 years. Man, you get out of that and it's like every day is is another learning.
Right. Wow. Definitely a revelation, right? That existence and that awareness for sure. And when we're talking about, so coming back around to stress, you said that that's common for people, right? They're comfortable because they understand or think they understand what that means. And so one of the things that you kind of talk about is the difference between stress management and stress resolution. What does
Hmm.
that really mean?
Yeah, so when you look at the average person, they're doing everything that they can to manage their stress, and they're either using negative stress management tools, nicotine, caffeine, alcohol, pharmaceutical drugs, recreational drugs, or they're on the opposite end and they're eating whole foods, right? They're exercising regularly. They're taking some time to be meditative.
Hmm.
They're doing some level of breath work. They're involved in some level of supplementation. Okay. And now they're using positive stress management tools.
Right.
Okay. And when you're in stress management, you can never get to freedom. The reason is this, is because there was a moment before you had that awareness. Everything that you accumulated up until that time is still inside your body.
Right.
Okay, so a lot of people think like, oh, well, I stopped drinking 10 years ago. Yeah, but you drank for 30. And how about all of the destruction internally, physiologically, structurally, psychologically, emotionally, that occurred to you while you were doing those things? I think it's great that you no longer do that anymore. But what have you done to go in and repair the damage that was created when you were smoking from 15 to 25,
Hmm.
right? When you had, poor sleep routine from 18 to 36, right? So all of those things accumulate. And when they accumulate, they're accumulating as stress initially, but that stress eventually turns into tension.
Right.
And what I mean, it turns into psychological tension, energetic tension, physiological tension, and structural tension. And the easiest thing to do is to remove the structural tension. Because if you refuse to do that, that tension is going to eventually turn into distortion. And what do we mean by distortion? You're either going to be distorted psychologically, which means that your perception of reality is
Hmm.
different than what's actually occurring. You're going to be distorted emotionally, which means you're going into a situation where there should be absolute connection, and what you're feeling is isolation and anxiety. Okay, or there's going to be energetic distortion, and what you're feeling is low energy and exhaustion rather than abundant amounts of energy. Or there's going to be physiological or structural distortion, which means you're going to have a body that has discomfort or dis-ease, or even worse, disease, right? So we're
Right.
talking about COPD, cancer, excruciating menstrual cramps, uh, devastating states of insomnia. These things are going on. Now, the average human is dealing with all of these things at some level.
Hmm.
And so what they're doing is they're doing everything that they can to manage the outcome, the inner outcome and the outer outcome of the unresolved stress. And
Right.
so they're managing. So I'm happy that people are doing their best today to manage. And that's why you have great value to people, not only because you're giving them great information, but you also have your own supplementation, right? So
Yeah.
you're adding profound value to those people. But what about all the people who are without resources, okay, have very little time, have very little energy, and what they need is something that will cut through the middle of their lifetime accumulated stress loads. And so lifetime accumulated stress load is all the stress that you accumulated between womb and your age now. So if you're
Mm.
36, that's 36 years. And children between womb and 13 have no choice around what they're receiving, because the charge on the water molecules is negative, which means that they're a receptive vessel until they turn 13, and the charge on the water molecules changes to positive, and they begin to individuate into their own state of function and being,
Hmm.
right, as an individual. So most of what people are attempting to manage is what happened between womb and 13.
Wow.
And the challenge is that between womb and 7, we were precognitive,
Hmm.
which means we had no understanding of reality. So we were making up things that were false about what was actually occurring. And now we're hired and required to live out those limiting beliefs until we get to a place in our life where the world challenges our limiting belief, and we either lose a job, um, hurt ourselves in some way,
Hmm.
lose resources, there's always some level of loss and pain involved, right? And
Yep.
whether that pain is chronic excruciating headaches, whether that pain again is insomnia, whether that pain is excruciating joint pain, I can't get out of bed because my back hurts all the time, I can't turn my head to the left because everything's so tight on the left, I've got all of this um, I've got all this problem in my joints and my hands, I can't grip the
Mm.
coffee cup any longer, like I'm starting to lose my ability to produce clear thought. Like when you
Mhm.
look at all of those things, they all lead back to one thing,
Mhm.
which is a high level of unresolved lifetime accumulated stress. And if you cut that by 50%, now you've moved into stress resolution because now you're dealing with what you've accumulated over your whole life. And what you've accumulated over your whole life is stored in your body. So your body is like a garage, right? And 99.9% of all humans are hoarders. And what they're hoarding is all these experiences that they've had. And they're living off of those experiences rather than transcending them. Great. You had this difficult trial and tribulation in your life. You moved on the other side of it. Now clean it out and let it go and make more room for new experiences rather than continue to keep living the same experience decade after decade after decade after decade, right? Like
Yep.
increase your perception emotionally, increase your perception physiologically, increase your awareness, and everything begins to change. And so the question is, are the listeners willing to shift out of negative and positive stress management tools and get on the stress resolution train? And if you do that, every single day is a new day because as you open your body, you open your mind. As you open your body, you open your emotions. As you open your
Mhm.
body, you open your spirit. And now, if I have an open body, an open mind, open emotions, and open spirit, guess what's happening? Every day, my IQ is getting higher because
Mm.
now I'm moving through the world as an amalgamated being as opposed to a one-trick pony,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
Otherwise, what happens is some people analytically, they're amazing, but you physically, and instinctually, that type of intelligence is really, really poor. Some people emotionally, they're willful, they're free, they're hopeful, but then they don't have the drive to follow through and complete on the things that they start, right? And so when you
Right.
look at the place of where humanity is going, we're getting a serious opportunity, every human, to be physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually intelligent. And this is the first time that this has happened in the history of humanity because we have the internet. You can
Mhm.
get on there. Everyone's teaching for free at some level. You can find multiple breathwork classes that are free, movement classes that are free, brain games that are free, spiritual gurus that are willing to educate you and teach you about ethics, morals, values, and principles, right? And how to develop yourself. And all this stuff is for free as long as the person's willing to put the time, energy, and effort into it. Where before, all of these things were only available for people who were highly educated and financially intelligent.
Yep.
And now the game has changed, right? So now I'm bringing forth a new level of information, which, hey, I'm giving the call to humanity. Let's shift out of stress management and let's shift into stress resolution. Because if we can do that, the average human that's being born today has a greater chance of experiencing happiness, joy, peace, and freedom at levels that humanity has never experienced before by the time that they're 18, 19, 25, 35 years old, which changes the game for everybody. Because when I'm happy and I feel good, I do good and make others feel good. But when I'm unhappy and I feel bad, I do bad and make others feel bad. And so then the prudent action to take is to do everything that you can to feel good.
Right. Right. Well, and I find it interesting too because I feel like some people don't even realize what it is to be happy anymore, right? They have a struggle to even find joy, right, with on many different levels, and are in almost a perpetual state of fight or flight, right? Just trying to survive and do more tasks and take the kids to wherever they need to go. And, I just feel like they're not even able to stop long enough to realize what is joy or being happy about something that's happened.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think probably the first step that they should take is emotional balance. Like, get yourself, if you're going to focus on one thing, forget about happiness for
Hmm.
now, forget about joy for now, focus on emotional balance. What do I have to do to get emotionally balanced? And then once you've got that in place, then focus on the next feeling, which is the feeling of freedom, where you feel like, oh, I'm at choice. I'm a creator of my own reality. And then once you get there, which means you've moved beyond most of your survival based strategies, then focus on inner peace. Because once I get to inner peace, I've got a direct bridge to happiness and joy.
Hmm.
But if I don't get to inner peace, and I don't get to freedom, and I don't get to emotional balance first, I'm never going to experience any consistent level of happiness or any consistent level of joy, because joy comes from the heart, and joy is relative to heart health. Happiness comes from the brain, and happiness comes from brain health. And so, in order for my brain to be happy, it means there's no way I can have a direct relationship with the daily acceptable drugs. Again, which are nicotine, caffeine, alcohol, sugars, pharmaceutical, recreational drugs, to include marijuana.
Hmm.
Now, once I have a healthy brain, now I have a happy life, because my brain is my governing vessel. It's the organ that communicates with every other part of my body to tell those parts of my body, hey, I think this is a little too far left. Why don't we bring it a little bit to the right? Oh, I don't know what you're doing over there, but that fungus, we need to get that out of here. Oh, and down there, oh, there's a little bacteria around your toenail. Let's get rid of that. Let's take care of that. So your body, your physiological health is relative to the health of your brain.
Hmm.
And the brain is where happiness comes from, because the brain is my connection to source, is
Right.
my connection to God. Okay? And when my brain is healthy, it can hear my heart. And now I'm following my 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 love instinct, and I'm taking heartfelt action to my own benefit. And when I take heartfelt action to my own benefit, my heart is full of joy. And so there's certain stages to get to joy and to happiness. But the first stage is emotional balance. And that means you're out of fight or flight response.
Right. So interesting. What what do you think, again, because I feel like so many people are running around in that state? What's one of the first steps that they could take, right? We've got, let's do a hard example. Well, maybe it's not hard. Busy mom, kids on the go, household to manage, full-time job. What's one of the simple investments from a health perspective to even start down a really good path and a wellness journey to eventually get that inner peace?
I think the first step that a mom could take that's in that situation is, one, is to be honest about how she's actually feeling about the situation that she's in,
Mm.
and to write down a list of her frustrations and her fears and share that with somebody she trusts. So at least she's getting that off of her chest. And in finding somebody in her life that she can have tea with once a week, or she can go for a short walk once a week, and she can offload all of the things that are stressing her. I think, one, it doesn't cost any money,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And we live in a different financial situation now, where everyone has to be mindful of what's going on. And any mom who's taking care of kids is always aware of the amount of resources that she has. So friendship, for the most part, is free. And I think offloading once a week her fears and her frustrations would be the best step that she could take, Because once that happens, she's going to feel emotionally invigorated
Mm.
because she's got that off of her chest. And now she's going to be making better decisions. And
Right.
she's going to feel happier and she's going to feel unburdened. And that unburdenedness is going to have a positive impact on the kids.
Yep.
Now,
Yeah.
if she has a little bit of resources, right, she could take a breathwork class online. Like, look, a mom who's super busy, does she want to leave the house? Is she going to have to find someone to babysit? Do you want to trust your kids to other people? Probably not.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think because of the internet, she can take a breathwork class. Put the kids down to bed at night. As soon as they go down, get this recorded a breathwork class, go through the class, offload, breathe. Another thing, take a hot bath,
Mm.
right? Get in a bathtub and sweat. Okay. And maybe while you're in the bath, you're talking to your girlfriend and offloading at the same time. So you can do two of these things at once and then
Yep.
finish off with staring into a candle and giving yourself some I am statements, right? Like, I am love, I am power, I am truth, I am strength, I am cared for, I am forgiveness, I am hopeful, and say each one of these statements 9 times while you're in a hot bath staring at a candle so you can amplify the violet flame inside of you. And these are things that she can do around the house
Mm-hmm.
that don't cost any money, don't cost any time, right?
Yep.
I mean, they cost a little bit of time, but they don't cost time away from your children.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people, when they get caught on what I like to call the hamster wheel of life, right? And they ignore the symptoms of feeling unwell and pushing through. What happens if someone continues to ignore those symptoms and those I want to say awareness triggers? They're just kind of shutting the door on them.
Yeah, I think what will eventually happen is they'll get more complex because the body's very smart and the body has its own intelligence and it always wants to heal. It always wants to integrate, it always wants to grow, it always wants to evolve.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And if you push it to a point where you're interfering with that, it will push back and it will make, instead of shifting, instead of being in a state of dis-ease, that's very simple, you'll be in a state of dis-ease that's very complex. And
Yeah.
then you're going to shift from dis-ease to disease, right? And all that really means is this, is that you have daily accumulated stress and you have lifetime accumulated stress loads, right? You have both of those.
Mm-hmm.
Daily accumulated stress is what you've endured in a 24-hour period that was not effectively resolved by your sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And so if you put in 100 watts of stress, okay, but you only take out 30 with your sleep, well, now the next day you have a carryover of 70.
Yeah.
And you can do that for a while because the body can store a lot of stress. I mean, a lot of stress. And then eventually one day you're going to wake up and you're going to go to open your eyes and suddenly things are going to be dimmer, right? Or your husband's going to be speaking and you're going to go, Bob, I need you to speak up. And he's like, Susie, I'm speaking loud already. And you're going to go, wow, it's getting more difficult to hear. Or you're going to get up and instead of sleeping through the night, you're going to be getting up to go to the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
Like anyone who's getting up to go to the bathroom once or twice or 3 times a night, you're already highly stressed, right? If you're losing your vision, if you're losing your hearing, if your body's more stiff, you're already in a high state of stress. And if you need caffeine to use it as a driver to get you to start your day, then that lets you know you're never recovering. No matter how much you sleep, your body's never recovering from the amount of stress that you put in it every day. And
Right.
so it really comes down to self-assessment and being willing to be honest with yourself and go, whoa, if my vision is more dim, my vision must be stressed. What controls my vision? Oh, so my blood must be weak or my liver must be strained. Well, what am I doing that's straining and stressing my liver and weakening my blood? Well,
Yeah.
obviously, the things that we ingest into our body have the greatest amount of effect. And so I would say, again, a self assessment around what you're actually noticing about you, of what's diminishing in your youthfulness, and being honest about it, and then seeking help to revitalize that part of yourself, puts you on a very unique path. It puts you on a path to wellness and healing and growth.
Yeah. And it's it's such a simple thing, right? But we overlook it because we get, again, kind of caught up in all of the day to day. And I feel like it's people consider certain things as they transpire in their lives as the new normal, right? It's like now this is acceptable, right? They don't even know what the beginning part looked like. They just know where they are now, and that's quote unquote normal when it really isn't.
No. And that's where they have to lean on their history. I mean, for me, I was an athlete my whole life, and I was very successful going through SEAL training, being in the SEAL teams, with
Hmm.
how my body responded when I needed to perform. And then one day, it didn't. And on that day, I remember thinking to myself, well, I didn't have pain on Monday. And now suddenly I have all this excruciating pain. This doesn't make sense to me. This needs to make sense. And
Yeah.
so I would challenge the listeners to sit back and ask yourself, does it make sense that your body has pain? Does it make sense that your sense organs are diminishing in function? Does
Hmm.
it make sense that your systemic organs are diminishing in function? And if that doesn't make any sense, well, now you have an opportunity to solve an unsolvable problem,
Yeah.
and you can do it. The information is already out there in spades, and it's free. And all you have to do is dig in and look yourself in the mirror and tell yourself you're worthy of love. Because it means you'd have to take heartfelt action to your own benefit.
Right.
And if you're unable to do that, what you're saying essentially to yourself and to your children and to your family and to your community, that you do not believe that you're worthy of love. And if you don't believe that you're worthy of love, well, then you're going to start rolling down the hill faster and faster. And instead of living to 120, 130, 140, 150 years where you're flourishing, you're going to tap out at 65, at 68, at 69. And
Yeah.
those last few years are going to be filled with suffering.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the awareness part, right? And that's why we're here.
Yeah.
Because it can be that simple to become aware and then take that first step, right?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your book, Free for Life.
Free for life.
Hmm.
I always knew I was going to write a book, right? I had no idea what the subject matter was going to be, but I knew when I was very young that I would be an author, right?
Hmm.
I loved to write poetry. I loved to write songs. And um, I put together a book that I think had value. At some point, I think everyone who has been focused in a specific direction
Hmm.
and you want to have impact, and you gather information that's valuable and could help people. And so I was motivated to be able to help others with the life lessons that I had transcended and helped me grow into the person that I became
Hmm.
and am continuing to become. And Free for Life, the first part of it is a biography, the second part is philosophy and science, and the third part is about the strategies that you can use in order, and the systems that have been developed that you can use to be able to reduce your lifetime accumulated stress loads and your daily accumulated stress loads. And so, Free for Life is the name of the book. The subtext is a U.S. Navy SEAL's path to inner freedom and outer peace. The question, well, what does that mean? When you're free internally, you're at peace with everything externally.
Right.
But when you're a prisoner to your own limiting beliefs internally, you want to imprison everyone else to your limiting philosophies. And I want to be at peace with the world around me at all times. And if I'm not, I know it's because there's something going on inside of me that's stuck. And then I can take ownership of it. And so I think Free for Life is probably a book that allows you to look at yourself and question, why am I here? And once I figure out why I'm here, what is it that I need to do and who is it that I need to become in order to bring it full circle, to be happy, joyful, free, and at peace. And if that's what you really want, is to create profound impact in the world around you, then the information in that book is essential.
Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. Well, I want to thank you for being on the show and sharing. And so we're going to have all of Christopher's links in the bio, including where to get his book, Free for Life. I think we brought up a lot of great awareness issues that people are facing today. And again, some of the free tools out there that can be used to be able to help you achieve that, if that resonates with you as you listen or watch this particular episode. So Christopher, thank you for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Well, thank you. And anyone listening, look, human optimization is like the perfect name for those who are wanting to grow beyond their limitations. And you're embodying that. And thank you for having me here. And it was great to share. And look, take a risk, people. And if you take a little bit of risk and you take heartfelt action to your own benefit, there's always a positive reward for that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And so for those of you watching on YouTube, thanks for tuning in. Subscribe to my channel and make sure you give this episode a thumbs up. And for those of you listening on your favorite podcast host, we will have a brand new episode in a couple of weeks, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us today on the Human Optimization Podcast. Episode technical production is by Grace Sylvester and guest booking by Stu Tate. Want to learn more? Visit Pitel-Killah.com for incredible free resources to supercharge your journey to becoming the best version of you. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like and subscribe to the Human Optimization Podcast and follow me on social media at Pitel-Killah.